What if the price of having a place to live didn't just rise, but quietly rewrote the entire middle-class economy? What if the cost of housing became the most powerful economic force of the 21st century? Not through a sudden crash, but through slow, relentless pressure. Around the world, housing prices are outpacing wages. Interest rates remain structurally high, and rent consumes a growing share of household income. What once felt temporary now looks permanent, and what once defined stability now feels increasingly fragile. In this global economy, what a scenario, homeownership, long considered the backbone of the middle class, begins to slip out of reach for millions, not because of laziness or poor decisions, but because the math no longer works. Salaries stagnate, asset prices inflate, and everyday life becomes a constant exercise in financial survival. This is not a crisis driven by collapse. It is driven by affordability. As future predictions collide with present reality, an alternate economy starts to emerge. One where access to housing determines access to opportunity. One where location defines income, mobility, and even identity. AI systems optimize cities for efficiency, not affordability. Megacorporations accumulate property at scale, transforming housing into a financial product rather than a social foundation. And slowly, almost invisibly, the middle class begins to thin out. Stay with me through this simulation. What you are about to see may change how you understand economic stability, social mobility, and the future of work. Because this isn't just a story about real estate. It's a story about power, leverage, and who gets a plan for the future and who doesn't. And perhaps most unsettling of all, this timeline doesn't start decades from now. It starts with trends already visible today. What if housing costs don't just pressure households, but systematically remove the economic layer that once held societies together? What if the disappearance of the middle class doesn't happen through recession or revolution, but through rent, mortgages, and monthly payments? And it's exactly here, at the moment where affordability quietly becomes destiny, that this alternate timeline begins to take shape. If the scenario feels plausible to you so far, or if something specific has already stood out, take a moment to leave a short comment, not to agree or disagree, but to mark how this alternate economic future resonates with you. These signals matter. They help this kind of global economy. What if analysis reach others who are also trying to understand where the system may be heading? And if the simulation feels worth exploring, a simple like quietly tells the algorithm that long-form, serious reflections on alternate economy timelines still have a place. That this isn't just speculation, but a way to examine patterns before they fully materialize. If following future predictions, economic simulations, and what if economy scenarios aligns with how you think about the world, being subscribed keeps you connected to the next timelines we'll explore together. Because this timeline doesn't slow down. In the first years of this transformation, nothing appears to break all at once. Cities keep operating. Markets remain open. People continue showing up to work each morning. But beneath the surface, a structural shift begins to take hold, subtle, persistent, and compounding over time, month by month, lease by lease, payment by payment. This is where the early signs of a new economic reality start to emerge. In the first years of this timeline, the shift is almost imperceptible. There are no dramatic headlines, no single moment of rupture. Instead, pressure accumulates quietly. Housing absorbs a larger share of income, month after month, leaving less room for anything else. Discretionary spending shrinks. Savings accounts are slowly drained. Debt rises, not explosively, but persistently. The middle class doesn't disappear, it compresses. Tighter budgets, postponed plans, smaller lives. Career decisions begin to change. People stop chasing opportunity and start protecting stability. Job mobility declines as workers remain anchored to unaffordable cities or trapped in low-opportunity regions simply because moving has become too risky. The economy still functions, but its internal rhythm changes. Consumption slows, entrepreneurship thins out, and risk-taking fades. This is a silent compression, an impact that reshapes behavior long before it reshapes statistics. As years pass, governments and central banks are forced to respond. Interest rate policy becomes a blunt instrument, pulled between fighting inflation and preventing social fracture. Subsidies, Tax credits, rent caps, and emergency housing programs appear, each addressing symptoms rather than structure. At the same time, megacorporations move with far greater speed. They acquire housing at scale, integrate living space into employment packages, and use AI to optimize labor around geography. Housing becomes leverage, a tool to secure workforce loyalty and suppress volatility. Power concentrates quietly, not through force, but through ownership of space. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As the decade unfolds, the global map itself begins to reorganize. Nations capable of automating construction, deploying AI-driven urban planning, and attracting capital stabilize faster. New economic blocks form around affordability rather than ideology. Migration shifts from chasing higher wages to seeking survivable cost structures. Some regions hollow out. Others harden into dense economic cores, surrounded by zones of exclusion. The global economy will becomes less about growth and more about access. Eventually, two extreme outcomes emerge. In one path, automation and large-scale housing systems lower costs, creating a managed abundance where stability exists, but autonomy is limited. In the other, housing remains scarce and financialized, locking entire populations into permanent dependency. One future offers comfort with control. The other enforces scarcity with precision. Both reshape incentives, decisions, and long-term trajectories. When this new order stabilizes, its deepest effects are human. Identity shifts from aspiration to optimization. Purpose narrows. Daily routines revolve around cost efficiency rather than growth. Family formation slows. Long-term planning feels abstract. The hidden truth of this future is not economic collapse, but psychological adaptation, a collective mental shift where survival replaces progress. And this is only the surface layer of what unfolds next. If this journey resonates with you, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." As the timeline moves into years 3 through 7, the pressure that once felt personal becomes institutional. Governments can no longer treat housing as a background issue. Rent controls appear across major cities, framed as temporary relief. Housing subsidies expand, tax incentives multiply, and emergency zoning reforms promise faster construction. But supply never catches up. Bureaucracy slows execution. Capital concentrates in safer assets, and demand keeps rising faster than the system can respond. On paper, action is everywhere. On the ground, little changes. Central banks face an impossible balance. Lower rates risk reigniting asset inflation. Higher rates threaten social fracture. Policy becomes reactive rather than strategic, managing volatility instead of solving structure. The truth hidden in the data is that housing is no longer just a market. It is a political liability. This is where megacorporations step fully into the vacuum. With access to capital, data, and AI-driven forecasting, they move faster than states ever could. Employer-owned housing expands quietly at first, marketed as a benefit. Location-based compensation becomes normalized. Live closer to the office. Pay less rent, accept less mobility. What looks like stability is actually dependence. Housing shifts from a personal asset into a mechanism of control, tying livelihood, geography, and survival into a single contract. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As the decade unfolds, the global system begins to reconfigure itself around these pressures. Nations that master automated construction, modular housing, and AI-optimized urban planning stabilize sooner. They attract capital, talent, and influence. New economic blocks form, not around ideology or currency, but around affordability and livability. Migration patterns reverse. People no longer chase opportunity. They chase sustainability. Some cities densify into hyper-efficient cores. Others hollow out entirely, becoming symbolic shells of a previous era. By the time this new order stabilizes, two extreme futures stand clearly apart. In one, large-scale automation and coordinated housing systems create an abundance economy. Costs fall, access improves, and material stability returns. But autonomy is limited, decisions are guided, and life is optimized by design. In the other, housing remains scarce and financialized. Ownership concentrates, rents harden, and an entire class becomes permanently transient. One future trades freedom for comfort. The other trades comfort for control. The deepest impact, however, is not economic. It is psychological. Daily routines reorganize around cost management. Purpose narrows. Long-term dreams feel distant. The collective mentality adapts, redefining success as endurance rather than growth. The hidden truth of this future lies in the transformation of identity itself, how people see their place in the world, and how much space they believe they are allowed to occupy. And beneath all of this, another layer is forming, one that will redefine power even further. If this journey resonates with you, write in the comments. I'm on this journey too. As the timeline stretches further, moving into years 7 through 15, the consequences of earlier decisions become impossible to ignore. What began as a housing affordability problem now reshapes geography itself. Cities reorganize into hyperdense economic cores, engineered for productivity and capital efficiency. These centers remain active, expensive, and tightly optimized. Around them, vast affordability deserts emerge, regions where opportunity is thinner, infrastructure decays, and long-term investment slows. Distance becomes destiny. Over time, nations capable of adapting faster pull ahead. Automated construction reduces building timelines. AI-driven urban planning reallocates space with surgical precision. Capital flows towards systems that promise predictability rather than growth. These countries stabilize sooner, not because they are more equal, but because they are more controlled. They become housing superpowers, exporting models of density, modular living, and algorithmic zoning to the rest of the world. Power shifts quietly, not through conflict, but through livability. Global migration follows a new logic. People no longer move primarily for higher wages or career ladders. They move for survivable living costs. Decisions once driven by ambition are now driven by arithmetic. Entire populations relocate based on rent-to-income ratios, access to shared infrastructure, and long-term cost projections. This marks a profound transformation in the global economy. Mobility remains, but aspiration fades. The journey becomes defensive. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario. As this new order stabilizes, two extreme futures begin to crystallize. In one path, housing systems scale successfully. Automation, standardized construction, and centralized planning lower costs across entire regions. An abundance economy takes shape, stable, efficient, and materially sufficient. But this abundance is managed. Choice narrows. Space is allocated, optimized, and monitored. Comfort exists, but freedom becomes abstract. In the parallel path, housing remains scarce and aggressively financialized. Ownership consolidates. Rents rise faster than productivity. Entire generations accept permanent transients as normal. This concentration economy produces wealth for a few and endurance for many. People adjust their expectations downward, redefining success as continuity rather than progress. The truth hidden beneath both outcomes is the same. Housing no longer reflects personal achievement. It reflects systemic permission. When this transformation fully settles, the deepest impact is internal. Daily routines revolve around cost calculations. Life decisions become risk-averse by default. The mental horizon shortens. Purpose shifts from building something lasting to maintaining balance within constraints. A new collective mentality emerges, adaptive, efficient, and quietly resigned. The real revelation of this future is not where people live, but how they think about their place in the world. And beneath the stabilized surface, another structural shift is already forming, one that will challenge the meaning of ownership itself. If this reflection resonates with you, write in the comments. That makes sense to me. As this alternate timeline continues to unfold, the system begins to reveal its most decisive split. By this point, the early signals have matured into structural outcomes. The economy no longer trends in one direction. It forks. In one version of the future, mass-scale automation reshapes housing from the ground up. Construction becomes modular, rapid, and algorithmically optimized. Housing as a service replaces ownership as the dominant model. Costs fall, not because land becomes abundant, but because space is standardized, shared, and efficiently allocated. This abundance feels real. People spend less of their income on shelter. Financial pressure eases. Stability returns. Yet this stability comes with conditions. Access replaces ownership. Living space is tied to systems, contracts, and performance metrics. Abundance exists, but it is managed, monitored, and rarely permanent. Comfort increases, while autonomy quietly narrows. Now I want to go even deeper into the parallel outcome. In the second timeline, housing never definancializes. Instead, it hardens. Property becomes the ultimate gatekeeper of wealth, security, and influence. Prices remain structurally high. Rents act as a permanent toll on participation in the economy. A global renter class emerges, not temporarily, but generationally. Wealth accumulates behind walls that fewer and fewer people can cross. Ownership is no longer a milestone. It is a dividing line. Over time, this split reshapes every major decision. Those who own space gain leverage, financial, political, and psychological. Those who merely occupy it optimize their lives around impermanence. Careers become flexible but fragile. Relationships delay. Roots shallow. The economy no longer sorts people by skill alone, but by spatial access. The truth hidden beneath productivity metrics is that space itself has become the primary currency. As the decade advances and this order stabilizes, the impact deepens beyond markets. Identity adapts. In the abundance path, people learn to live within systems designed for them. In the concentration path, people learn to survive within systems designed without them. The collective mentality shifts in both worlds. One normalizes guidance. The other normalizes constraint. Purpose narrows in different ways, but the transformation is universal. Life becomes less about expansion and more about navigation. Daily routines reflect this new reality. Decisions once driven by aspiration are filtered through access, eligibility, and cost. The journey of adulthood changes shape. Progress feels conditional. Stability feels borrowed. The most profound revelation of this future is not inequality itself, but how quickly it becomes invisible, absorbed into habits, expectations, and silent acceptance. And beneath both outcomes, another question begins to surface, one that challenges not just housing, but the meaning of ownership, freedom, and belonging in a fully optimized economy. If this reflection connects with you, write in the comments. I'm on this journey too. As this alternate future moves forward and begins to settle into place, its most profound effects are no longer measured in prices or policies, but in people. Over time, the definition of success quietly changes. Ownership fades as a universal goal. In its place emerges a new metric: survival efficiency. How little space can sustain a life. How few risks can preserve stability. How smoothly one can adapt to constant constraint. In the early years, these shifts feel temporary. People delay decisions, waiting for conditions to improve. But as the decade unfolds, delay becomes habit. Family formation slows, not because values change overnight, but because uncertainty becomes structural. Starting a household feels less like a milestone and more like a liability. Careers follow the same pattern. Purpose gives way to predictability. Jobs are chosen not for meaning or growth, but for location stability, housing access, and cost containment. Risk-taking disappears quietly, absorbed by a collective calculation of exposure. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As routines adapt, time itself feels different. Long-term planning becomes abstract. 5-year goals shrink into 12-month survival windows. People learn to live in cycles of renewal rather than accumulation, lease to lease, contract to contract. The journey of adulthood compresses. The idea of settling down loses its physical anchor. Housing no longer supports identity. It constrains it. When this new order fully stabilizes, culture adjusts around these limits. Creativity narrows. Social ties become more transient. Communities form around convenience rather than continuity. The mental map of life reorganizes, prioritizing access over belonging. This is a hidden transformation of the era, a collective mentality shaped not by aspiration, but by optimization under pressure. The truth beneath this future is not despair, but adaptation. People endure. Systems function. The economy continues. But something subtle is lost in the process, a shared sense that life is building toward something owned, rooted, and passed forward. In its place emerges a more efficient, more cautious society. fluent in constraint and fluent in trade-offs. And beneath these adaptations, beneath the routines and accepted limits, another question quietly grows, one that challenges whether this future is the end state or merely a transition into something even more fundamental. If this reflection resonates with you, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." As a simulated future reaches its most revealing stage, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Nothing here was triggered by war, by natural disaster, or by sudden economic collapse. There was no single shock powerful enough to force change overnight. Instead, everything unfolded through something far more ordinary: the price of shelter, a monthly number, a line item, a quiet cost that gradually determined who could plan, who could invest, and who could belong. In the early years, this shifted behind optimism and adaptation. Later, it was justified through policy, technology, and efficiency. Over time, it became normalized. Entire systems reorganized themselves around access rather than ownership, around eligibility rather than aspiration. The economy did not stop innovating, but innovation increasingly served those already inside the system. Progress continued, just not evenly. Now I want to go even deeper into the meaning of this outcome. When housing defines economic participation, class stops being about income alone. It becomes spatial, temporal, psychological. Those with stable access to space gain the ability to think long-term, to take risks, to compound opportunity. Those without it learn to optimize the present. The divide is no longer loud. It is procedural, built into contracts, algorithms, and invisible thresholds. Over the decade, a quiet revelation takes hold. The middle class was never erased by force. It was priced out. Its habits, values, and expectations slowly became incompatible with the cost structure of everyday life. What replaces it is not a single class, but a gradient of access, a society organized by proximity to stability. When this new order stabilizes, the question is no longer whether it's fair, but whether it is reversible. Can an economy built on access rediscover mobility? Can a system optimized for efficiency relearn how to support purpose? Or does it continue forward, refining its rules, normalizing its outcomes, and training each generation to expect less space, physically and metaphorically, than the one before? This is the hidden tension beneath the surface of this future. Not collapse, but acceptance. Not resistance, but adjustment. A society that functions, produces, and survives, while quietly redefining what it means to succeed. And beneath that acceptance, another possibility begins to form. One that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. One that may challenge the very assumption that shelter must remain scarce at all. If this reflection connects with you, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." If you stay with this simulation until now, it tells me something important. It tells me you're not just watching for answers, you're thinking through possibilities. This channel exists for exactly that reason, to explore what if economy scenarios, alternate futures, and long-term economic simulations that look beyond headlines and into structure, incentives, and consequences. If this kind of journey helps you see the global economy with more clarity, staying subscribed keeps you connected to the next timelines we'll unfold together. If this future genuinely made you pause and reflect, leave a comment saying, "This future really made me think." It's a simple way to mark that you reached the end of this path, and it helps build a space where serious reflections on future predictions and alternate economies can keep reaching the right people. And if this analysis added value, a like quietly signals that these deep dives matter. It helps this kind of content surface to others who are also trying to understand where the world might be heading, before those possibilities become realities. There's another simulation right here that connects directly with this one. It explores a different pressure point in the same evolving system. Click and keep going with me there, because this timeline is only one of many possible futures.